Alright, in this video we're going to take a look at calculating percent of parent. Now percent of parent we're using in a very generic way. We're talking about calculating a measure, in this case dollar sales, revenue, for any one state as a percent of its parent. And the parent of any state here, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, and so forth, happens to be the Mid-Atlantic region. But there might be other instances where we want to do something along the same lines, but where it might be for a different dimension member. For instance, we might be looking at all of the product subcategories and want to calculate their percent of their parent category. Or we might want to show sales for days as a percent of the month, or sales for individual cities as a percent of a state or of a sales region. So oftentimes we want to take a measure for a particular dimension member and then calculate it as a percentage of its outer parent. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to pick any state in the country. In this case, we'll pick Pennsylvania. We want to display the dollar sales not only for Pennsylvania, but for all of the other members that share the same parent. In this case, all the other states in the Mid-Atlantic, or stated in other terms, the siblings of Pennsylvania. We want to show the siblings of Pennsylvania, the region that it belongs to, the dollar sales for each one, and its percent of the parent. So here we see that Pennsylvania has the biggest percent of parent. It's almost 65% of the Mid-Atlantic. Well, to do this, we will say that across the top we want to show dollar sales, and we want to show percent of parent on the column axis. And on the row axis, what we're going to show is the customer dimension, the region attribute, and then the children, but only for the customer dimension and the state of PA and the siblings of PA. Now there's an implied hierarchy here. We're actually using the customer hierarchy, which is implied here because we have nothing in between the dimension and the member here. So that's using the customer hierarchy to get the siblings of Pennsylvania. That's basically the same as saying get the parent of Pennsylvania, get all the children. So we'll put that on the rows from the sales cube. Now what I need up here is a calculation for percent of parent. Now the calculation for percent of parent is going to be essentially the dollar sales for the current slice, which we can just simply write out as dollar sales. So the numerator here will be whatever the current slice happens to be, because this calculation is firing off once for each set of members along the row axis. The denominator here is going to be dollar sales expressed for, and so we have to put that in parentheses. Dollar sales expressed for the customer dimension, the customer hierarchy, and again the Wehrmark database actually calls the primary hierarchy the same thing as the dimension. Not a very good idea, but that's what it does. The customer hierarchy, the customer dimension, the customer hierarchy, the current member, and the parent of the current member. So what this will do is this will take the dollar sales for any one state and divide it by the dollar sales for the parent of that member. So that'll give us 1.256 million divided by whatever the sales happens to be for the Mid-Atlantic as a whole. And we will express this as currency. Well, I'll execute this. And, whoops, I'm sorry, not a currency, express it as percent. Sorry about that. And I'll execute this. And I get the same results down the left here. So I'm getting Pennsylvania and its siblings, which are Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, and so forth. The regions associated with it. Now I only picked one single state here, so of course I'm only going to get the one region in the Mid-Atlantic. The dollar sales, and then each state as a percent of its parent. Now the nice thing about this calculation is that it's generic. Notice how this has no reference to a particular level within the customer hierarchy, which means that if I simply change this, let's say instead that I want to show cities. Now let me get the name of a city here. So within the cities, I'll take Atlantic City, New Jersey. So I'll change this, and I will say customer Atlantic City, New Jersey. And then down the left, I will show the state associated with that, which is obviously going to be New Jersey, and I'll execute this. Well, what I get is obviously New Jersey and all of its cities. And the percent of parent is now giving me the dollar sales for any one city as a percent of the state. So I didn't have to change this calculation at all. It simply took the dollar sales for the current slice and divided it by the dollar sales for the parent of that slice. So it doesn't matter if I'm looking at a city level or a state or a region, it's going to take the dollar sales divided by the dollar sales for the parent. So we've written this in a generic way. If we wanted to do something along the lines of the product dimension, we would just simply replace this with the dollar sales for the product dimension, whatever product hierarchy we happen to be working with, and that way it would work at multiple levels. Now, if I wanted to use this for all the states, I could simply say customer state children, or excuse me, customer region children, and apply that to customer state children on rows. And now I'm going to get, and I'll put a non-empty in front of this to filter out any states that are null. Well, now in the central region, I have Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and Utah, and those are getting up to 100% or possibly 99.99% because of rounding. Obviously, Texas has the biggest share there, and in the Mid-Atlantic, it's Pennsylvania, and in the Midwest, looks like Ohio and Illinois have a good piece of the pie there. So once again, regardless of what we put down the left, whether we pick a particular member, get its siblings, or pick all the states, or whatever we put down the left, this calculated member here doesn't change. It's simply taking the dollar sales as a percent of its parent. And one other thing here, just to show the true flexibility of this, we can do this over a period of time. I'll put time quarter children at the top here and apply that to those two measures. And I will, in the where clause, say where time 2005, and what we will get is the 4 quarters going across, and we can see any change. So, for instance, Texas, well, that dropped down to about 87% in the 3rd quarter, but it was always in the 90s other quarters. We see here that New Jersey, well, in quarter 1, they were at 19% of the